Welcome to Everything Life Coaching. I'm John Kim.
And I'm Noelle Cordeaux. We are the founders of Lumia.
And we're super passionate about all things coaching, and we want to share what we've learned from over a decade of coaching and training thousands of life coaches.
Let's dive into the science and magic of coaching. Hello, and welcome to Everything Life Coaching. Noelle here today with a special guest, Paul Chamberlain. Paul, hello and welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Noelle. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. I am delighted to be having this conversation. Paul is a serial entrepreneur, instructor of entrepreneurship, Lumia alum, creative executive, coach, and most importantly, one of my dear, dear friends. And I am delighted to be introducing the world to more members of our Lumia family and to be getting into coaching today. Do you want to give us a little bit of an expansion beyond my Cliff Notes? Orient our listeners. Who are you in the world?
My name is Paul Chamberlain, and I'm a dad and a creative executive, and now somebody who has found their purpose, and I've turned it into coaching. It's become an integral part of my life because I've been able to integrate my past life into the coaching, and that's what's made it really fun. It's been a long, winding road to get here, from the early days of the .com boom to ending up being a chief creative officer of an esports company here in Vegas. So there were a lot of things in between, and a lot of things in between led to my decision to become a coach and coming in contact with people who helped me find my way.
A lot of folks come into the space of coaching with coaching being their first experience with entrepreneurship. And it's this idea of freedom. I want to have my own practice. I want to have my own brand, my own niche. I want to help others. As we know, the landscape of coaching is shifting really dramatically from solopreneur to corporate position to firm to wellness to hospitality. And I think what's really interesting about your story is that you have so much experience with entrepreneurship already. Can you talk a little bit about entrepreneurship itself and what it's really like to be launching something that is yours, whether you are, a coach or whether you are, doing any of the other things that you've done?
Yeah, I teach at the university level. I teach here at UNLV, and I teach social entrepreneurship, and I used to teach entrepreneur organizations. But the one thing that I would tell my students every single time, because the end semester project was creating a company, was creating a deck to pitch with. And I would tell them, I go, don't you dare come to me with something that's market driven. Do not go to, tonight and Google what are the hottest companies of 2023 and then build a deck around that. I don't want that. I don't want to see an app. I don't want to see a dating app. I don't want to see any of the crap that's out there. What I want to see is something that you will marry your life to for the next 10 years, that you believe in, that when you stand before a funder or somebody who's going to help you get on your feet, they're going to leave meeting you going, Jesus, that's the guy. That's the horse I want to bet on. Yeah. You never get that with something that is purely analytical and logistical. And it's like, this is where I should be putting my energies. Yes, there should be that as well. But man, you as an entrepreneur, you are going to engage in something that is going to cost you relationships, cost you money, cost you time. But then it's also going to gain all those things on the other side that you have no idea of knowing. It's a crapshoot.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there were a couple of things that you said that were really important. Number one was the concept of something being market driven. In my own work around coaching, one of the things that I'm always looking at are the trends and the direction that the market is heading in. So I think it's an important distinction to make between, what's an example of something that we know is coming versus something that currently exists that folks might be looking to copy. And where my mind goes is two places. One is the current push that's happening right now towards collectivism and groups in coaching. We know that the consumer market is hungry for connection and groups and joining. And there are a couple people who are doing it, but it's not really mainstream right now. And then another one is my wheelhouse, the world of sexuality coaching, where this is just starting to hit as a really viable coaching niche, and people might be gravitating towards that space. So if we're looking at this and our listeners saying, well, how the hell do I do this, right? I might take what you shared and say, all right, how do you dive into your authentic connection within the landscape?
Mine was, what have I been coached on? What have I gone to therapy on? What would I want to see a coach for? And do I have a handle on it? And that's sort of how I found my way to shame. And shame is what I specialize in helping people process, because, 6 years ago, I had a therapist sit across from me and go, "You're a mountain of shame." And it was pretty accurate. I mean, saved a lot of money because it nailed it right there. And then I'm a creative to my core, to the day I die. I can't go to these market research reports that you go through and go, okay, where's the niche under shame-based creatives? Wait, there's nothing in here for that. But then it's like, I can stand behind this and I can look at this as my block of marble, as my lump of clay. This is where I'm going to start. I'm sure as hell not going to lean in. Okay, leadership is hot. I could fake it, I guess, but it's not gonna work.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the core is that feeling of, am I faking it or not? Now, you are now on the other side of coach training. You are now certified and fully out there, working as a coach. What was that progression like for you from the beginner's mind of like, how the hell do I do this? Am I doing it right? Yeah. To the position of having clients that tell you that you're changing their life. What was that internal experience like? Because I think sometimes newbies get confused of like, you're learning a new craft, that's legit, and then really sinking into that authenticity.
It's a journey that everybody goes through. And now in retrospect with other coaches and other Lumia alums, we joke about it, is that you are so fixated on staying within the guardrails imposed by your teachings at Lumia and ICF. And it's like, oh my God, I've got to do this and I've got to do that you forget the music and the magic of your heart, which led you to coaching in the first place. And so it's really just like rock climbing or riding a bike. The first time you do it, okay, you're just tense. Your forearms are tired. Your heart rate is elevated. 6 months later, different story. And that's sort of the deal with coaching. The things that make you relax is the feedback, and if anybody has the opportunity to be thrust into a group setting, whether it's observational, or participating, that's phenomenal, because then you're getting all different. So that's one thing that I would love to tell people, is that if you can put yourself in a mentorship situation where somebody's allowing you to be present in a group situation, that is invaluable.
That's why I love what we do at Lumia, because the entire org is focused on collective experiences, groups. Mentorship is baked right into the training, which we love to give people those experiences. And I think this is a great segue into your area of specialization, which is shame, because oftentimes when we're in that position of, am I doing it right? How do I speak up? How do I speak out? That's where people get frozen. And coaching itself is a verbal discipline. We have to speak. as coaches. And so there's that very real juxtaposition of almost walking yourself over the bridge of fear to get to a point where you're able to really kind of deliver verbally. I used to be really scared podcasting. That was something that used to terrify me, having my face be on video. Were my thoughts good enough? Were my words good enough? Does anyone care? You also were you podcasting before you were coaching?
Yes. And I was helping a lot of people get their podcast put together, but I was so self-conscious about it that I was like, because I knew so much about it, I'm like, I could never be somebody that was just going to flip on GarageBand and start pontificating. I could never do that. That's bullshit. I'm not going to, I need a brand. I need a purpose. I need a theme. So I would put up all these barriers before I even got started.
Yeah. So funny story about that and me. The reason that we have Lumia as a company is because I put up so many barriers to starting my own coaching practice that I built a whole freaking company in order to avoid the thing that we're talking about. And here we are today, right?
That's great. That's a nice fun fact.
It is. It's a good fun fact. And even down to, my very first profile picture as a coach, I had my sunglasses on and John said, you have to take your sunglasses off, Noelle. You can't have a profile picture with sunglasses on. So that aspect of hiding and stacking is super real. What was it like for you launching your brand? What is your brand? Tell us about it. And then walk us through that inception and then moving to one-on-one clients.
My brand is Smart, Funny, Tortured. That is who I coach. That was, is who I am as well. And that goes back to where the comfort level is. Like, if you are coming from a place of authenticity and knowing yourself and knowing that moment where it's like me with shame, I literally feel like, give me the mic. I got this. All right. I can talk about this. If you're coaching from that place, that makes it great. And I had an extremely powerful and insightful coach who helped me at a really dark time of my crisis. And I did a weekend intensive with him, and it was off-site, and it was pretty powerful. And at the end, I told him that I could be inspired to coach. And he's like, okay, well, who would you coach? And man, it was like a wand hit me in the back of the head. And I said, Smart, Funny, Tortured people. I go, I know them. That is my tribe. Those are my people. And that was really helpful in determining where I wanted to go with coaching. Once again, it wasn't about a market. It was about the type of people that I wanted to coach. And I know that some of the master coaches that work with Lumia, Rena Martin as one that comes to mind, is somebody that didn't, and this could be, presumptuous on my part to assume, she didn't necessarily go for the market of sexual intimacy and shame-free sex. She went for the person that she couldn't help in her previous job, the women that were unseen, that weren't being helped by the system. So she went after the person instead of the market.
Yeah, absolutely. And that fact is so important for coaches to really wrap their head around, because the person who's coming to you is trying to solve their own unique problem, right? So your client is going to come for the problem. So if you're thinking intensely about that human and what keeps them up at night and how you might be able to soothe them with your knowledge, your practice, your gifts, your content, that's where we have that intersection of successful practice. So how did you do it? How did you begin to have one-on-one clients find you?
It was authentically telling my story. I mean, it was actually, one of my first clients was actually a doctor. And he's like, so what's going on? And I started telling him where I was going with coaching and how it had empowered me and how passionate I felt about it. And he literally was like, I'm in. I want that. That's it. And I was like, geez, what? I don't even have a website yet. And he's like, no, he goes, I can feel this. And that was legitimizing. That was crazy how that comes up. And you will notice that once you find that groove, it happens organically. Now that's very, it's woo woo. And I know that I'd be on the other side of the speaker rolling my eyes right now going, yeah, okay, that sounds like a hell of a marketing plan. But it is truly when you slip into that place of authenticity where you're not serving the market, but you're serving that person who hasn't found you yet. That's when stuff starts to click.
And I agree with you. So despite my best efforts to avoid a private practice, I have one. Yeah. And I don't have a website. I don't advertise. I've been coaching for 12 years and I have sustained a consistent practice through word of mouth only.
Yeah.
Simply by being authentic about what I do. And what I do, most people don't even know what it means. I do colonized mind coaching, right? So like that's where I'm at in the radical system at this point. It's looking at the colonized mind. How do we wish to overcome the systemic barriers that have been imposed on us? And it's a really special person who shows up at my doorstep that's like, let's crack my brain and soul open, right?
Yeah, but that's the beauty of it, is that you've found that person. I mean, I used to have this, I still do, this idea of the type of coach that I wanted to be. I didn't want to be the guy with the website or, even the podcast. I wanted to be the guy that two people were in a bar in Soho and a guy slides a number across on a cocktail napkin and go, I know a guy, call this guy. That's the kind of coach that I want. It's like in a certain strata, kind of like, this secret weapon. Like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, that could play out with any number of professions, Paul. I mean,
that's right. Like, all of it's cool.
This could expand. Yeah. All right. So people started to come to you one-on-one, same way as me, just like word of mouth, authenticity, interacting with you online, interacting with you in person. Was it your personal sphere? How did you start to expand that bubble?
It was starting to come online, and then also doing, being exposed to group facilitation. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, what the irony of it all is, the podcast became a limiter. People, because I had a podcast, people were thinking like, oh, you're too busy. Do you have, I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm sitting in a closet recording this. This is, I'm not in a studio shuttling between meetings. It's like,
yeah.
And so that was a really interesting thing. So I had to make myself accessible again in a certain way. So yeah, it was. And truth be told, I have not made a concerted effort to make my marketing efforts the tip of the spear to go after one-on-one clients. Yeah. I'm starting to realize that me personally, I wish to coach at scale. I wish to do things that I can, group settings, tools, and then the one-on-one are the ones that I too am going to enjoy and get something out of. That it's not like I got five clients today and 6 on Thursday. Oh, okay, Christ, here we go.
Yeah. And I want to follow that progression from individual to group to scale, because I think a lot of folks, when they come into the space of coaching, feel that one-on-one is truly one of the only outlets.
Yeah.
What has been your experience building to a group setting? How did you get into it? What do you do? What do you like about it?
The whole way I found Lumia was through our good friend John Kim. In a very rough time in my life, I was walking through the Burbank airport and I went to the bookstore and I saw I Used to Be a Miserable Fuck. And I was like, wow, they're making print-on-demand books just for me now. Okay. I bought it. It really resonated with me. I enjoyed the style. And then 2 years down the line, I found that John was the co-founder of Lumia. And I'm like, okay, this talks to me. All right, I can dive into this. And And through that wonderful discovery has led me to a circus of new friends and new opportunities and great people, yourself included. And John seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself and bringing me into the fold and having me work with Shane with one of his retreats and his groups. And that has blossomed both in my confidence, my relationship with John, and my relationship with coaching.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. John is also responsible for me being the circus master, I might add. That the same thing happened to me where he said, "Wow, you're really talented. Do you want to join my team?" And I was like, "Sure." And so, we can thank John for much of this.
His generosity of spirit is his superpower.
It is. It truly is. And I think that spirit definitely resonates through Lumia. And I also find that it resonates through the space of coaching itself, because everybody's really quite in it together as a coach practitioner with, a field that is truly just beginning to advance within the public's consciousness. And I love being around other coaches because everyone is so generative and everyone is so positive because we're experts at reframing. And it's like, I see little mini sessions happening all over the place whenever there's a coaching gathering, which is really cool. Okay. So let's talk about scale.
Yep.
When you think about scale, that's something that can be really intimidating to people. And something that I often think about is I'm not nearly as publicly visible as John is, or even perhaps, as you are. And yet I know I have through and within Lumia kind of a small folk following. Yeah. And my everyday life is really boring. Like, yes, I do run a company at scale, but my lived experience is still very much in my modest home and my modest body. So when we think about scale, can you help break down the fear barrier for folks? What does that mean?
It's essentially taking your gifts that you want to bring to coaching and figuring out a way to give them to more people and expending less energy on your part as you do in a one-on-one session. Because if you're doing coaching right, you should feel spent by the end of the day. You've left it on the field. You've given somebody your attention. You've active listened your ass off, and it's tiring. So how can I do this with economies of scale? And that's what's so great about the world that we live in now is the opportunities have never been richer nor more profitable to have a tight and right fan base or listener base or client base than having 10,000 followers. If you've got 500, 250 ride or die clients or fans or followers, that can be incredibly impactful. And that can also be sustaining both financially and, spiritually.
That's not a big number to hit.
Yeah.
That, and I think that's really important to think about in terms of the way that we create content, curate it, and so on. Something that you have been working on and that I have had the wonderful benefit of being the recipient of some dorkouts is AI and coaching. You're developing a course on AI and coaching. Tell us a little bit. This is a broad and great topic. I've been so impressed by the way you've harnessed this in your own practice. What drove you to say, I need to make this for other people?
It's because it is tailor-made for coaching if utilized properly. It's now been adopted all over the place. I've heard other people using the same kind of construct of language, but AI is not going to kill your coaching practice. Coaches who understand AI are going to kill your coaching practice. We're right back in 1985, 1990 with printers, spitting on Photoshop and PageMaker and Aldous Freehand and the Macintosh. It's that kind of thing. Steve Jobs called the computer the bicycle for the mind. This is an F-45 kind of situation now for coaching. And I've been in my career, I started off in video games, started off in coding. I saw the dot-com boom. Then I was involved in the world of streaming at the beginning in the early 2000s, saw that explode. Now here we are. Streaming is what rules our life. And now this is a profoundly important moment in humanity. And I know that sounds like hyperbole, but the merging of tech and humanity is coming together in such a way that it is beholden to us as coaches to understand what the hell is going on. And that goes to, just mobile devices, augmented reality, virtual reality, AI. All this stuff is not the, purview of 16-year-olds playing Call of Duty anymore or being on your phone. It's integrated into our life. When you fire up Netflix and you get recommendations on what to watch, that's AI at work. When you are served up ads, that's AI at work. So when ChatGPT came out and I saw language-based models and the way that they were doing and the way that it was parsing information, I just kind of chuckled to myself and I'm like, oh God, here we go. This is awesome.
Talk to me about the progression of how to educate people, because when folks are coming into a space and they're like, all right, I see this happening in the world around me, I can add value to the lives of coaches. I can support, our industry. How did you go about curating the information that's going to go in your course? And how did you think about your audience?
It's been a process. And as you know, I've kept you abreast on it. It has been, because it started off and it was incredibly, prosaic and very academic. And then a Pew Research study came out that said only 14% of Americans had ever even touched ChatGPT. 54 had only heard of AI. And so that meant that 86% of people hadn't really interacted with it yet. And so I'm like, okay, I need to scale this back. So I broke it up into two courses. There's AI Basics for the modern coach and AI Mastery for the modern coach. And the AI Basics is like, this is what it is. This is exactly what ChatGPT is. This is the difference between Alexa and Bard. These kinds of things. Like, okay, what are we talking about? What does it do? What are the misconceptions? Is it going to kill my coaching practice? Is it going to fire nuclear missiles in 5 years? All these things that we hear and give a basic understanding. And I really want to bring it to a level where I'm like, hi, welcome to the class. Check out these cool new brushes. I don't know what you're going to paint. I'm not going to tell you how to hold it, but I'm going to show you what is available. Knock yourself out. Go for it.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like I could use a course that is designed in that way for almost every single facet of modern life at this point, because I'm one of the dinosaurs. I'm like, how does this work? What is it? How do I access it? And my inclination is to avoid it and sidestep it. But the way that you're presenting the information feels really accessible to me. And that's exciting.
Yeah, the integration has been organic. The integration has also been in tune with my loves and my passion. The first thing that happened, I did not use ChatGPT right off the bat. What I used was Midjourney, which is the graphic generator, text to graphics, where you can type in something and it will give you an image back. I had a client I work in metaphor. That is a massive underpinning of my practice. That's just where my brain goes. That's how I like to communicate. So metaphor and analogy. And we were talking about barriers, and I said, well, describe to me what your barrier looks like. And he's like, it's like a big steel door. And I'm like, okay, we've seen all the heist movies. I'm like, how do they blow a steel door? And he's like, well, they usually put those cool little charges around the door frame and then bam, 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 and they blow. And while he was doing that, I was at Midjourney and I said, give me a photorealistic image of a vault door being blown by tiny explosive charges. And it gave me this beautiful picture of this metal door with it. And not taking away from the session, not listening to my client, let's just say that, but I was able to generate it, pull it, and I texted to him and I go, look at your phone. And he looked at it and he's like, holy shit, I'm printing this out and putting this on my refrigerator. And it was like, it sounds so mundane, but giving a client a souvenir at the end of their session has been like the most, I don't care what language and how well I stay within my ICF parameters, that blew everything out of the water.
Oh, yeah. Well, and let me pull the curtains back for a little bit. You know, what you did in that moment was engage in real time in the science of priming. The science of priming is what's used in sports psychology, visualization, to help folks remember the image that's going to get them to their goal state. So being able to generate images in this way for clients is actually reinforcing what our brains are capable of doing. It speeds up our capacity for advancement because we're no longer relying on the mind-generated image. We have a secondary image that's been prompted by the mind that really seals the deal from a neuroplasticity perspective.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you for putting a fine point on that, because the excitement and the energy of both of us feeding off of each other in this, now we've got an anchor. Now we have a linchpin to our discussion. Now we have something that we can chuckle about. And that's the beauty that's how AI is used. It's, you're literally sitting at your desk and you're yelling across the office, hey, Midjourney, fire me up an image, based on this. Hey, I need it. It's that kind of, if you can think about it in that, not something usurping your authority or coming in and doing a better job than you. It's you activating a tool that you've never had before that's going to make the way you coach better.
This will be available, widely. And as I understand it, the way that you're designing the course, anyone can take it at any time.
Yep.
It will be automated. From a business perspective, from a scaling perspective, this is something that you're putting a lot of work into up front. But once you launch and folks are taking your course, what do you expect the maintenance to be like?
On this one, unfortunately, a lot, because there isn't a week that goes by where AI news doesn't change. So the fundamentals will be there in place, but it'll also be, once again, there's another avenue for communication with the people who take the thing, whether in newsletters or social media posts or blog posts. So it's a living organism, which is really good. It's, passive, a passive income source really isn't, but it's sort of what I want in this video on demand. And then it's scary for me because all this stuff is coming out of my head, but I'm like, okay, I need to establish a curriculum. I need to put this in language of somebody coming. I need to make this accessible. I need to make this exciting for somebody, because mainstream media and certain things that are put out there are, have really done a disservice to the potential of what we have in store. I firmly believe that in a few years, we're going to wake up one morning and we're going to get the news report that says, yeah, we got cancer knocked. Because AI right now, in some corner, there is a server farm churning away at molecules and genetic structures, thousands of times faster than human beings. I mean, there are things that the benchmarks that they had set for AI for doing certain things were 30 years out. There have been things that had benchmarks that long that are getting crushed in 6 weeks, 8 weeks time. So it's the Wild West right now.
You're not wrong. Interestingly, I had the privilege of sitting in a meeting. It was a group coaching session for female leaders. And one of the women that was with me is starting the first ever AI-based cancer research think tank. Doesn't exist yet. She's in the seed round phase. Her goal is to get a Nobel laureate on her team, and then they will take it to market. So this is happening, in real time. And I love that you're presenting this from the standpoint of tools. I can imagine that folks who interact with you on this will also want help. Like real-time help. How do I do this? How do I build this? How do I work with this? So I could see a world where this might bubble back into more groups, more.
I could too. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the goal, is because there are, I can explain how I use it, but it's just like, okay, how do I set up a Discord server so I can get Midjourney? I mean, that just sounded like, garbled language to somebody who's never even heard that before. So yes, there are certain things in place, and it will get easier. I mean, I remember I am of an age where I remember the internet before browsers, where I used to sign into an X-Files fan user group, and you'd literally type a command and go make dinner while it was churning, and then come back and check out what it said. And I also remember sitting at my desk at Sega, looking at a news report and laughing with friends, saying that Microsoft Internet Explorer had a 4% market share. And they're like, oh yeah, Bill Gates is never going to pull it off. They're never going to have a browser. I mean, just stuff like that. So life comes at you fast. Don't place any bets right now. The wheel's spinning.
Yeah. And I think that's a really hopeful tone also. I mean, life is coming at us fast, but as coaches especially, reframing resilience, swift change based on observation is what we do. That is how we are trained to maneuver through the world. And so if anybody has a shot at harnessing the new and the next as it's coming, I think that coaching is the right frontier to model effective usage of this technology.
The other thing that coaches are extremely well versed in and extremely well suited to do is, if I can explain just the process of how I use another tool in coaching. I use a particular tool that doesn't record the session, but it listens to the session and then gives me a transcript of the session. Mm-hmm. And it will also give me an AI summary of that session too, which sometimes works great. But staying within the parameters, and this is something that I go into in the course, of ethics, privacy, and best practices for this information that you're getting back. I scrub the transcript, I scrub the summary from any kind of identifiable, language that would hurt the privacy of the session. So I take that scrubbed transcript, put it into Chat GPT, and then I say, find patterns, word uses, themes within this discussion. Bam, bam, bam.
Wow.
It gives me that. Okay, from those, give me 3 bullet points of the top themes and word uses. Bam, bam, bam. Okay, from point 2, now give me 3 follow-up questions for the next session based on point 2. Bam, bam, bam. Now give me exercises based in cognitive behavioral therapy or this modality that I can give to the client. Bam. Okay, now give me an article with a hyperlink that I can send to the client.
Wow.
So within 20 minutes, you can send something to your client that is completely overwhelming. It's like, holy shit, this person really is at the top of their game. And it was like, yeah, I didn't break a sweat. I did it while my hot water was getting hot.
Yeah. And what you just described would probably take me about 2 to 3 hours.
But but what I said is like coaches are perfectly attuned to this, is that you learn to use that language based AI assistant in a way that you would talk to somebody as a coach. You start asking questions or going, okay, now do this. Wait a minute. And the way that you construct prompts and its instruction of it is intuitive questioning and going, okay, wait, I'm going to reframe that. Let me see if I can get a different result this way. And so you're just not going, hi, give me a transcript of this or give me a summary of this. It's like, wait a minute. I noticed that you used that the client used this word or this phrasing 3 times. What can I draw from this? Using the influences of Carl Jung, using the influences of Heidegger, using the influences of Esther Perel, and then it'll give you something else.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I am excited for this course. Like, seriously, like, first of all, because this is the kind of stuff that I would love to get into and start doing, especially with a background in academia and research. That's what I do. And it sounds like this could speed up the process of discovery so much. So the reason I'm excited about this is synthesis. So what AI can't do for us is the specific synthesis. When I was trained to make the mental transition from master's level to PhD level thinking, when you're at master's level, you're reporting back information that you've learned and you're writing about it. When you move to the PhD level, you're trained to move into synthesis, where you're taking different ideas, bringing them together to create something new. Yeah. And so it sounds like using AI, you'd be able to give yourself a whole bunch of different ideas to draw from in order to build new thought very quickly.
It is tantamount intellectually to a cyborg. You are a cybernetic organism. I know that has horribly dark science fiction overtones, but those of us, again, of an age, remember the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman. These were humans whose abilities were augmented by technology. They were better, faster, stronger. This is what I truly believe is we're headed with this when used responsibly and also strategically. And you can be there's literally a blast radius around you as a coach when you really get this rolling and you really know what you're doing with it. It's just look, we could not be the coaches that we are today without Zoom. That is synthesis. Yep. That is what you're talking about. We could not be the coaches we could be without our phone, without calendar apps, without all the tools that we use. You couldn't be the coach that you wanted to be without tarot cards if that was your thing. You couldn't be the coach that, so we need things to synthesize into our practice.
That was a very beautiful segue into yet again another of your awesome projects.
This is getting tiresome.
I just try to get to the gym a couple times a week, and Paul's over there like creating and creating and creating. You said that we all need tools to integrate into our practice. And one of the things that is often neglected in coaching, but is vitally important, is based on the science of priming and our natural curiosity as humans. It's visual play.
Yeah.
Visual play can be game changing for our clients. And I'm using puns all over the place here. Can you please tell us about Shame the Game and what else you are up to as a coach?
Well, I was looking into market trends and everything. I came across, I think it was actually from one of your podcasts. It led me down the rabbit hole of discovering that one of the fastest growing segments of coaching and self-help were cards, were these little card sets of daily affirmations or gratitude or sexual intimacy with your partner, all these little catalysts for discussion or action. And I'm like, wait a minute. I used to work at Upper Deck, which was a baseball company. We had a creative agency that had greeting. So I knew this space. I'm like, okay, wait, what? And then this is a really funny fact, but there's a Barnes & Noble by our house that does bang up business. It's always packed. And I noticed the tarot cards were behind the counter. And I'm like, why are the tarot cards back here? And they're like, because people steal them. I'm like, what? Like cold medicine? You got to keep it behind the counter? That's ridiculous. And they're like, yeah, they're so hot. People will rip. And I'm like, okay, wait a minute. There's something here. So when I've talked about shame with people, I use the idea of a siege on shame, that this is a fortification that you are going to lay siege to, that you need to set a village on fire, to declare intention that you're coming for it. And so I construct this, and it's been very helpful in dealing with clients and especially in groups. And I'm like, okay, what are the types of shame? And so I assign them like tarot cards. And then I'm like, okay, what are the triggers and activators for that shame? And then that's another set of cards. And then it's like, what's the intrinsic essence of your character at its best that would be able to reduce or ameliorate this shame? And so I created these 3 sets of cards within one master set and designed the artwork in Midjourney, put it together, and then I constructed this then I prompt engineered kind of this construct that pulled from thought leaders, researchers, philosophers, and people that were specialized in shame. And so I've built it in a way that if you put together a particular matrix of cards, you can get a reading off of it. It'll tell you like, okay, you pulled this worth card, you pulled these shame cards, and you pulled this trigger card, activating card. This is what, and it's for entertainment purposes only. It is not to diagnose or anything like that. And I've used it with other people, and as they're going through the deck and they'll see one of the activator cards is like the broken trust. And it's literally a messed up bed. And they look at that card and they're like, oh, geez. Yeah. Okay. Or else they look at the resilient warrior card and they're like, yeah, that's me. Or the breaker of chains, or, and so it initiates discussion. So if one person had the deck, they could just use it for journaling, being like, oh shit, this really brings us up. Okay. All right. Or 2 people, a couple coming together for the first time in their relationship as a way to create discussion, or be like, to discuss, trauma or experiences or shame that they've held that they want to share with a partner, or use it in therapy. It just initiates conversation as you're going through it. That's been the most powerful thing, is when I have people go through the cards, they'll come across one and they'll just be like, they'll roll their eyes and just exhale and be like, ooh, yeah, okay. And that's been probably one of the most fulfilling experiences professionally in coaching, is seeing how these damn little things spark conversation.
Well, they're visually stunning, absolutely visually stunning. And the game itself is provocative. I think it's, shame is a topic that even when we say the word, if you walked into a supermarket and just yelled shame, people would duck.
Yeah.
Because the word itself just evokes things that we must keep hidden. And, very similar to the science of priming, the way you're using AI visualization within your sessions, what is working neurobiologically with the cards is the facet of externalization.
Yeah.
So somebody's able to take their feelings, their experiences, everything that they've internalized, and pull it out of their body and make it 150% less scary because it's embodied in a card.
Yeah.
And they can hold it and they can see it and they can talk about it, and it's outside of their body. It's not them. And it's a wonderful way for people to channel the things that they might not have a language for into the language of the set itself.
Yep. that is the goal. I imagine myself sitting in a therapist's office and a therapist just handing me the purple velvet bag and go through this, and just with no preface or anything, just saying go through this, and being like, and then being and having that moment where you're like, wow, okay, yeah, this. I've had a couple of people where a tear has come to their eye. Like, really? Did you look over my shoulder on this one? And I'm like. And no, that's been probably the most common card people have pulled. Having those moments, that's what's going to be really cool, is getting the data of the readings and seeing what cards are getting pulled the most and things like that, and start being able to generate data off of how people are aligning with these visuals.
What's coming up for me, and what I think is so profound about really pulling together the entirety of your story and product line, from podcast to individual session to groups and retreats to courses to shame the game, is that coaching focuses on the authentic experience of humanness. Mm-hmm. And that what we do is truly to mirror back to the world and to other humans what is, what exists, what is universal for all of us, whether it's a podcast that someone listens to, an individual session that someone experiences, a collective group, or sitting quietly by yourself, really trying to process your experience, your unique and yet universal experience with shame.
Yeah, because if somebody had told me 10 years ago that, hey, your stock and trade is going to be the stuff that right now is making you physically ill, and why why you're going to do ayahuasca, I would have laughed at them. It was the process for me, especially. Things changed for me when I saw Avengers Endgame and I saw Fat Thor. that allowed me to connect visually, metaphorically, the hero's journey, all that stuff that resonated with me. I could sit in an office or I could sit before a coach and tell all my problems. But when I saw this fictional character of characters that I enjoyed, that age-old path of, hubris, the fall, suffering, redemption, when I saw it in a context that I could really relate to, it clicked for me. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a swing and see if I can translate this into something that comes from my practice, comes from my heart, comes from me.
Well, I am so glad that you did. And I am so excited for the rest of this year to unfold so that we can have continued conversations about the data, the science. I'm excited to take the course and probably see other Lumia peeps there, because we all kind of follow each other around. So that's the way it works. Thank you so much for this conversation. And, oftentimes people who listen to this podcast are at the starting line. And a lot of Lumia students tell me that they use this podcast as a companion as they're going through coach training and listen to it for comfort. What advice would you give to anyone who's been at the starting line, or, as is so common to coaches, people who are circling, and it's maybe even been years that they're circling this profession? What would you share?
Is this a trick question? Because we're not supposed to give advice as coaches.
Well, no, this is come on.
I'm kidding. I had to take, it was low hanging fruit. I had to take that joke. No, do it for one. That's my piece of advice, because if you don't become a coach, the skills that you learn in Lumia will serve you in any profession. How to listen, how to be an empathetic participant in life, in other people's lives, to think strategically about the words coming out of your mouth and how they're best delivered. I mean, all these are core skills that we should have as human beings. But when you start to realize the power of how it helps, that's when you're like, oh, wait a minute, I can do this. And oh, I can pull in the things that I love and talk to people who are going to get me when I make a fat Thor, an AI, or a geek metaphor reference that are going to be served by that. And I can get paid for that. Shit, I'm in. All right, let's go.
Awesome. The water is warm. Well, Paul, where should we direct people to find you?
At smartfunnytortured.com.
Beautiful.
And shamethegame.com is for
beautiful
the cards. And the course will also be accessible off of smartfunnytortured.com.
Awesome. And we'll put all the links in the show notes so that folks have them. Thank you so much for your time, for your company, for your expertise and insight. This was a beautiful conversation.
And thank you, Noelle, for everything you do at Lumia and what you've provided and what Lumia has given to me, both you and John. It's been a great journey.
Thanks for listening to Everything Life Coaching. If you're feeling the draw to become a coach, head to lumiacoaching.com/everything. Explore a new career that brings fulfillment, gives you a true sense of purpose, and a bold community to do it with.
Lumia is ready to equip you with the tools, training, and community you will need to reach your goals. If you're ready to build a unique coaching business on your own terms while making an impact on the world at large, Lumia is the next bold step in your coaching journey. That's lumiacoaching.com/everything.
And hey, if you're waiting for a sign, this is it.